thank you in advance. This is my first speech, and I'm in the beginning of probably a pretty long journey to becoming a better speaker. So I thank you in advance for your patience and your encouragement. I also want to thank Christine, who is not here today. She actually was the inspiration for the title of my speech. After our second membership meeting, we were walking back to the office and chit-chatting back and forth, and I confessed, I've signed up for my first speech. She just turned and looked at me and shook her head. Carrie, we haven't even been members for a month and you're speaking already? You have no fear. So apparently I've been this way for pretty much all of my life. I have a scar on my right eyebrow that I got when I was about 8 months old. I was on my changing table and happened to see my 10-year-old brother in the hallway and decided that he was doing something really interesting and I needed to go over there with him, never minding the fact that I was 3 foot off the ground and landed on it. Fortunately, as I grew older, I also became wiser and started calculating my risks a little bit more so I didn't do as much damage. Now, you're going to doubt this when I say that in 8th grade, the freshman football coaches came over from the high school. They were recruiting for the following season. And generally speaking, they are looking towards the boys to come to this orientation, but there was no objection for me to go to the orientation, and I signed up for it. And the following year, I was the first female in the region to play for a high school football team. A couple years later, I was a sophomore in college, and I was coming back from Detroit. I love going to the auto show every year, and you know that's in January, and the roads aren't so great. But I'm driving along, and I get in a car accident. Not a bad one, I wasn't injured, but I really decided that I was fed up with winter. Recently, a friend had moved to Hawaii, and just happened to say, you know, if you want to come out, I've got a couch you can stay on. So I dropped my classes the next day. I did get a full refund, no wasting of money. Flew out to Hawaii, and when I touched down, I signed up with a service and became a nanny. So not only did I have a place to live, but I had an income too. Later, as a young adult, I met a couple that raced hot air balloons. They were looking for a crew because you can't just fly them by yourself, and I kind of looked around and thought, I'm not doing anything this summer. Sure, why not? So when I wasn't on their chase crew, I actually got to ride in the basket. I was in the teddy bear, which is a giant special shape, and I also got to ride in their speed balloon, which actually goes a lot faster than you really want it to. Moving on down the road a little bit, at 32, I was working at Michigan State University, and I was getting another degree. I've always loved travel, and I've pretty much always been short on the money to do big travel trips. However, if you're a student at Michigan State University and you work at Michigan State, they pay your tuition, you can do a study abroad. So I did 6 credits in Cambridge, England, and 5 weeks of vacation because you only have classes 3 days a week. So I got to do Cambridge on a really tight budget. A couple of years later, I found myself 36, I was married, and I don't know if you're familiar with it, but Ann Landers has a fairly infamous quote or a question, and it's, am I better off with him or without him? And I was pondering this, and some of my friends or acquaintances were looking at me like, you're crazy. You know, you have a great life. But I realized, you know what? The answer is without. And I up and got divorced, and I haven't looked back. It was a really, really good decision. Now, to prove that I'm not all brawn, and I do have a little bit of brain, I was kind of mouthing off to the chair of the Supply Chain Management Department at MSU. And he asked me, so when are you going to get your PhD in logistics? I kind of looked at him and thought, well, how do I apply? He told me, so I studied for the GRE, took the test, I applied, and I was accepted into the PhD program. However, after about a year, it really wasn't my cup of tea. Decided, cut my losses right now, got a job with Accenture, came and worked on a project on the state. A couple of years ago, I ran into a friend from high school. She was getting into triathlons, and she said, well, you know, you run, you bike, you kind of sort of swim. Why don't you do the triathlon with me? And well, okay. I mean, they're not going to let me drown or anything, so went ahead. And in 2010, I finished the Hawk Island Triathlon. Now, I have to add, it wasn't exactly an exultant finish, but I finished nonetheless. Recently, I've rappelled off the Boji building for a fundraiser. Last week, I actually went to a tactical gun camp to learn close quarter combat. Bruises to prove it. I'm organizing a skydiving trip for my office. And after that email that we got earlier in the week about the 2014 International Conference in Kuala Lumpur, I'm starting to make my travel arrangements to Malaysia. Now you've heard a little bit about me, and it's time to let you in on a little secret. My life isn't exactly about no fear. It's more about being open to the possibilities that are around me, because in all honesty, it's more about no regrets. Thank you very much.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carrie. And as Toastmaster, I should be up here shaking your hands at the podium, but I was so
sorry.
engrossed in your speech that
And I was running away from the podium. No, get me away.
But great job on the first speech. Please, everyone, fill out, we've got an evaluation form to fill out what you thought she did well or maybe can work on, and give you a minute to do that before we move to our next section.
Did I get my what? Oh yeah, I have all my books. So asking the experienced speakers, how long before your pulse actually slows down?
Oh, well. That's a good question.